Have you ever heard someone say this? This is actually something that people are saying. And today I'm going to give you 3 major reasons why it's such an awesome piece of equipment and why you should consider using it if you're not currently. So before we get to these 3 major reasons, the first thing I want to say is just the idea that the Smith machine is somehow non-functional or it's doing the work for you or anything similar that you've ever heard, just put it out of your head, just forget about it. A lot of the people making these kinds of claims don't really understand just the fact that the Smith machine is a tool, just like the hack squat machine is a tool, the leg press is a tool, the chest press machine is a tool, right? Everything you encounter in the gym is simply an object or a set of objects which apply force to your body. So just think about the Smith machine in that kind of a sense, because we shouldn't be coming into this with a very emotionally biased, like this is good or this is bad perspective. We should just look at the features of what the Smith machine allows for, and we should identify whether or not it's more or less in line with what we're trying to do in the gym on any given day. So the first major benefit, and the first 2, by the way, are going to be more obvious. I'm going to move through them a little bit more quickly. The third one and the set of principles in the third one is going to be the most important sort of to take away from this video. And so the first major benefit is just the fact that you can do a billion, not literally, but a billion different variations on the Smith machine. You can train your chest by doing flat presses or incline presses. You can train your delts by doing overhead presses. You can do squats with a quad dominance, squats with a glute dominance. You could do standing calf raises. You could do rows. You could do some kind of erector exercise. Right? The list goes on and on and on and on, and we would be here all day if we were to list every single exercise that you could do on the Smith machine. So first and foremost, you can do so many different options on it. It's crazy, and so few other pieces of equipment have this capacity because of the next couple qualities that we're going to talk about. So the next thing to consider is just simply the safety, right? And this is, again, perhaps an obvious one, but just think about this, right? On a regular barbell, you basically are left just to the constraints of something like safety racks, right? You set them at a certain height so you don't choke yourself if you fail on a bench press. But on the Smith machine, you not only have that, right? You can adjust the safeties wherever you want, but you also have this really cool wrist flicking mechanism that allows you to hook the bar onto any part of the machine at any point in the range. So if you are looking to, get all the way to a point where you're finishing your presses, let's say you're doing chest presses, and you're like, okay, I did a partial rep, and then I'm like, a little more, you can literally just cock your wrists, right? And basically rack the bar from that position. So it has this additional layer of safety to it that makes it so safe because you, and obviously if you have a training partner, it's super easy for your training partner, if you can't do that for whatever reason, to do it for you, right? So it has all these little safety nets that allow you to be safer regardless of the variation that you're doing. All right, so number 3, and again, this is sort of the biggest picture one, is going to have a set of different considerations, is just the fact that the bar path is constrained. So what does this mean? Well, a bar path being constrained basically just means that you can't change the bar path, right? So think about any other machine that you've ever used. You can't actually, unless you're the Hulk or something like that, change how the bar is moving, right? In a barbell bench press, let's say, the bar could fall this way. It could fall this way. You could have something that is uncomfortably bending your wrist because you have to worry about holding the bar over top of your wrist. But in a Smith machine, you can effectively organize yourself around the constraint of the bar. And so what this will allow for is an incredible amount of individualization in your setup and your execution. Right? Imagine you're a trainer or a coach and you have an athlete who is 6'8". You can set him up in the Smith machine. You can set, the bar higher up and you can use whatever range you want. Imagine on the flip side that you're training someone who's, 5 feet taller or less. You can simply lower the bar to wherever is appropriate for them. And not only that, but you also don't have to worry about your balance, right? Picture a barbell squat. You have to worry about falling forward, backwards, sideways. On the Smith machine, you don't have to pay attention to any of that. You basically just have to set your feet up wherever you want to set them, or your hands up wherever you want to set them, whether it's a wider arm path, a narrower arm path. You could do any number of different things. And of course, this is sort of building on these 2 to some degree, right? Which is why I discussed these first. But you can basically set your feet wherever you want. You can set them out in front of the bar, behind the bar, right? In line with the bar, or staggered. There's just a million different things that you can do. And because of the fact that the bar is constrained to a very specific path, you can not only do different variations, but you can do variations that are more specific to a particular muscle group than just about any other exercise variation, especially in relationship to something like a traditional barbell motion. And this has tremendous implications on the process of learning. Why? And what do I mean by learning? Well, what I mean by learning is basically just your ability to develop skill in a pattern. So let's say that someone is struggling to learn or to understand how to hinge. A lot of times people have a very tough time understanding how to move their hips, in what direction to move their hips, how much should they bend their knees, right? And vice versa for something like a squat, right? How much do I push my knees forward versus set my hips backward versus control the position of my spine? And because of the fact that it is constrained and that you can individualize your setup however you want and however is comfortable for you and your current level of ability and your current skill set and your your lever lengths and those kinds of things. And not only do you not have to worry about balance, but you can set yourself up in such a way, given these other qualities of the Smith machine, so that the process of executing these motions becomes seamless. So I'm going to give you two different examples of how you can very easily learn a specific pattern and how those patterns can then translate to all other exercises that you're doing. All right, so imagine we have two different scenarios. All right, I'm going to explain everything here. I know it's a little sloppy. If we have a Smith machine that is angled, which a vast majority of them in my experience are angled, they tend to not be straight upward and downward 90 degrees from the floor, we can set up in different directions to easily accomplish different goals. So imagine that someone is facing outward in the direction of the tilt of the machine, right? So the bar is tilting in this direction slightly, and we're facing in that direction of the tilt. Well, what we can do is we can basically set up our feet in a very specific position. And in doing so, mostly, by the way, in line or slightly in front of the bar, and in doing so, we can allow our knees to really travel forward because we can kind of sit backward and almost fall backward against the bar. And this will create a direction of force in this exercise, which will allow you to really drive your knees in the direction that the machine is tilting, right? Just experiment, for yourself the next time you're under a Smith machine, set up basically with your feet under the bar and face in the direction of the tilt. You'll find that it's kind of very unnatural to want to sit backward. You'll almost be like pushed forward to a very significant degree. And because you're getting pushed forward, your quads and your knees are going to be the things to sort of do a lot of the work, because they have to, specifically the knee joint, it has to travel in the direction of the tilt, right? And because your knees are going to be moving farther away from where you're pushing, that's going to give your knee an advantage, your quads an advantage, and this is going to turn into a really quad dominant squat. And guess what? The greatest part about this, again, per our point number 3, with all those different qualities, is because of the fact that the bar is constrained and you don't have to worry about basically keeping your feet in a very specific position, you can move your feet farther out in front of the bar. And in essence, what that will allow for is more mobility into the motion, which is really just a fancy way in this way of saying you can just change the starting joint position, much like you could, let's say, use a heel elevation in a regular squat to allow you to squat deeper. And so you don't even need any sort of heel elevation in this case, not necessarily, because again, you can move your feet and position your feet in such a way where you can get really deep, a lot of knee bend, and therefore a lot of quad tension and stimulus. On the flip side, you could also face away from the direction of tilt, right? So the direction of tilt is this way, and your eyeballs are pointed in this direction. What will happen is kind of the flip side of this, where instead of your knees being encouraged to travel this way, because that wouldn't make sense. Why would your knees naturally go this way if the bar is going that way, right? Your hips are going to be the thing to go backward. And because your hips are going to be the thing to go backward, the hips are going to be the joint that in essence is going to be very good at moving the bar upward and backward in this direction. Again, because they're the thing that's encouraged to move backward away from where we're putting force through the floor. And they're going to need to be the thing to move the bar upward and forward in this direction, again, sort of thrusting it forward as you come up. So this is just one example of many where you could effectively eliminate the necessity to really have to coach someone or coach yourself through something like a more hip dominant squat versus a quad dominant squat, right? You don't have to do all the mental gymnastics that might be involved in, okay, yeah, put your stance here, keep the foot pressure here, move your knees here, move your hips here, keep your spine this way. A lot of the time, if you are set up in the correct position for the desired goal, whatever it happens to be, and it could also be a blend of these two things, by the way, you're basically just setting yourself up for success, because the only thing that you need to do is just start to lower yourself. And when you start to lower yourself and your body becomes guided by the path of the machine, you can learn these patterns much more quickly and teach these patterns much more quickly to, again, to yourself or to others. And this is something that doesn't just stay within the constraints of this exercise. If you learn how to squat with the quads, if you learn how to squat with the glutes, you can start to get a feel of what those things should feel like and how your body should be moving to accomplish those goals. And then you can translate that understanding and that skill development to other exercise variations like free weight squats or hack squats or leg presses, right? This is all principle based. And your brain is going to sort of recognize the pattern of squat for quads or squat for glutes, whatever it happens to be. So overall, I absolutely love the Smith machine for these reasons, but keep in mind that there are always downsides to any tool that you use, right? A hammer is really good at some things and not so good at others. A wrench is really good for some things and not good at others. And the Smith machine is just, again, as I mentioned earlier, one of those tools that you can use in the gym, and how effective it is for you is dependent on your understanding and your knowledge of the different features and how you could use those features to be more specific to the context that you're trying to be specific to with any exercise goal.